Hey everyone, I'm Kel, and welcome to another Flesh and Blood deck tech video. Today we are covering Kano, Drakai of Ether. This deck is all about the damage, all about direct arcane damage, throwing it at your opponent's face. Don't care about their defense cards, we're just going to try to hit them as hard as we can. Before we talk about the deck, let's talk about our hero, Kano, Drakai of Ether. He has a 4 starting hand size, a 30 starting life total, which is significantly less than the 40 that most other heroes start out with. And he has this activated ability, Instant, for 3 resources. Look at the top card of your deck. If it is a non-attack action card, and literally every single card in this deck is a non-attack action card, you may banish it. If you do, you may play it this turn as though it were an instant, so it does not take up one of your actions. Meaning you can actually do this on your opponent's turn. You can do this on your turn. As long as you have the resources to do it and then the resources to play that card, you can play the card. This is how we're able to play multiple spells in a single turn. This and some other stuff in the deck, but it's definitely a really good ability for Kano to have. Before we get started with the main deck, let's talk about all of his equipment, starting off with his weapon, Crucible of Aetherweave. It has a once per turn instant effect for 1 resource. The next card you play this turn with an effect that deals arcane damage, and all the damage that we're doing is arcane damage, instead deals that much damage plus 1. So kind of a nice little damage boost there, and any ability that does damage multiple times actually affects from this. So if a spell, for example, said deal 1 arcane damage and then deal another arcane damage, this would end up dealing 4 because, you know, it would deal 2 plus 2. Pretty good, and there's some other stuff in the deck that this really synergizes with. Let's talk about the actual equipment spread here. We're going to start off with the helmet with Arcanite Skullcap. This card is really good for Kano because he has that lower starting life total, and we really want to be defensive with the cards that we can be defensive with. It says if you have less life than your opponent, Arcanite Skullcap gains +1 defense and Arcane Barrier 3, and we're almost always going to have less life than our opponent. It also has Battle Worn, which means you can defend with it multiple times, but every time you do, it gets a little -1 counter on it. Pretty good. I mean, this is probably the best defensive helmet that we have in the game, but if you don't have this version, because it is a legendary and it's kind of expensive, you can just run any other defensive option that you have. Next up is another legendary with Storm Striders. This is the Wizard Equipment legendary. It has an instant ability of 1 resource, destroy Storm Striders. You may play your next Wizard non-attack action card this turn as though it were an instant. Once again, we really want to play cards as instants because we want to play multiple cards per turn, you know, because typically you can only play more or less 1 card per turn unless it gives you go again and all that kind of stuff. But since it's an instant, it kind of bypasses all of that. It also has Arcane Barrier 2, so if you don't want to destroy it, you can kind of just hold on to these and use them as an Arcane Barrier item. Not too bad at all. Next up, we have the Robe of Rapture. I know some decks are going to want to run the Fyendal's Spring Tunic, but I think the Robe of Rapture is a pretty good alternative. This is the Wizard Equipment specific common card. It has action, destroy Robe of Rapture, gain 3 resources. Pretty good. All at once, gain 3 resources. And then it also has Arcane Barrier 1. Gaining that 3 resources is very good because, you know, that's where we want to be to activate Kano's, you know, hero ability. And also, you know, 3 resources is going to be pretty good in general to play most of our abilities. And then finally, I have either Iron Rot Gauntlet or the Null Rune Gloves, really depending on what kind of opponent you're facing. They're both pretty similar, both very generic cards. So the Iron Rot Gauntlet has a defensive 1 and Blade Break. So after you defend with it, it gets destroyed. The Null Rune Gloves have Arcane Barrier 1, and that's it. So if you're playing against a deck that's heavily, you know, physical, get the Iron Rot Gauntlet. If they're playing against another wizard, get the Null Rune Gloves, or maybe even a heavy arcane damage build, Rune Blade type deck. Alright, so let's start talking about the deck. First up, we have all of our action cards that deal damage, and that's most of the deck, as you can see here. This other little bit is card draw, support cards, defensive cards, but this is where we want to be. This is our damaging cards, because this is an all-out, like I said, damage-dealing deck, kind of trying to burn your opponent down as fast as you can, but without doing some weird combo stuff. First up, we have Blazing Ether. This is a 1 pitch value, 0 cost Kano specialization, and it says deal X arcane damage to target hero, where X is the amount of arcane damage you have dealt to them this turn. We are running a full playset of them because this card is amazing. We definitely want to play some cards, do some damage, and then finish it all off with a free Blazing Ether. You can even use Kano's ability, dealing some damage from the top of your deck, pop off your Storm Striders to play some cards at instant speed from your hand, and then finish it all off with a Blazing Ether. Really, really good card for this deck. If you're going to buy any Majestics for this deck, this is probably the one that you're going to want to look at first, honestly. Next up is Forked Lightning. This is a wizard action with red pitch value, a cost of 3, and it says deal 2 arcane damage to target hero, deal 2 arcane damage to target hero. We are running a full playset of these, and any ability that pumps the damage up of this adds it twice. So our Crucible of the Aetherweave, for example, pumps up the next damage that we deal by 1. This would deal 3 and then 3. So just that alone makes this damage 6 instead of 4. Very, very good, and it kind of scales upward as you get, more abilities that do that. Forked Lightning is definitely one of the best damage dealers that we have in the entire deck. Next up is Sonic Boom. This is a yellow pitch value, 2-cost wizard action. It says deal 3 damage to target opposing hero. And then it says if Sonic Boom deals damage, look at the top card of your deck. If it's a wizard non-attack action card, you may banish it. If you do, you may play it this turn as though it were an instant, and it costs X resource less to play, where X is the damage dealt by Sonic Boom. This card is really sweet. If you can do that max 3 damage, flip over the top card and just immediately play it, deal more damage, and then, possibly even finish off your opponent with like a Blazing Ether or something, you can kind of see where this deck is going. You can do a lot of damage all at once. We, of course, are running a full playset of Sonic Boom. Next up is Lesson in Lava. This is another Kano specialization. It is a yellow pitch value, 1-cost wizard action card. Deal 3 damage to target opposing hero. If Lesson in Lava deals damage, you may search your deck for a wizard card with cost equal to or less than the damage dealt by Lesson in Lava. Reveal it, then shuffle your deck, put it on top of your deck. Doesn't actually go into your hand, but it does go on top of your deck, and that really synergizes well with, I know I keep pulling him aside, with Kano here, because Kano plays cards from the top of your deck. There's some really, really sweet lines here where you can play a Lesson in Lava, search your deck for the Blazing Ether, put on top of the deck, use Kano's ability, and then you can kind of play it. And Lesson in Lava, Blazing Ether costs 0 to play, so you can kind of play it for free. Lots of cool lines here. We are running a full playset of Lesson in Lava. Now we're going to start getting to the meat and potatoes of the deck. We showed off all of our really sweet, flashy burn spells. Now we're just going to go through all of the rest, starting off with Aether Spindle. We are running both the red pitch value and the blue pitch value of this card, and this is true for almost every card going onward. We're running the red pitch and the blue pitch. Red pitch for damage, blue pitch for resources, because we really want those 3 resources. 3 is really the key point here for the Kano deck, because it's the amount of cost you need for his hero ability and many, many other things. So what does Aether Spindle do? The red pitch value costs 2, has a defense of 3. It says deal 4 arcane damage to target opposing hero. Pretty good. Then Opt X, where X is the damage dealt by Aether Spindle. Also pretty good. And if you don't know what Opt does, lets you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and you can either put them on the top or on the bottom in any order. The blue version of this does the exact same thing, except it does 2 arcane damage instead of 4. Like I said, we're running blues for pitch and reds for damage. I should also note that the defense down here is actually pretty important. Most of these are going to be a defense of 3. That's really where we want to be at, because we want to have a decent amount of defense in the deck, because we're already starting on the back end. We're starting with 10 less health than all of the other heroes. Next up is Aether Flare. This is a red pitch value, 1-cost wizard action, does have a defense of 3. Deal 3 arcane damage to target opposing hero. The next card you play this turn with an effect that deals arcane damage instead deals that much arcane damage plus X, where X is the damage dealt by Aether Flare. Once again, one of those cards that really pumps up our future spells. I like this card a lot, but not enough to include the blue version. We are just running the red pitch value version of this, because we really want to do the most damage as possible to kind of get the best out of the effect here. This next giant chunk of cards, all the cards are pretty close. We're going to talk about them individually, but they're all very, very similar. So we have Voltic Bolt. Voltic Bolt is a wizard action for 2 costs. We are running the red pitch and the blue pitch value of this, and it just says deal 5 arcane damage to target hero, has a defense of 3. The blue pitch is the exact same thing, except it deals 3 arcane damage instead of 5. Both of these are actually quite good to play, and basically the heaviest hitting regular type spell that we have in the deck. Next up, we have Scalding Rain. This is exactly the same thing as the Voltic Bolt, except It deals 4 arcane damage to a hero and has a cost of 1, whereas the blue pitch value deals 2 damage and also still has that cost of 1. So it's basically just kind of like slightly scaled down. Costs less resources to play, deals less damage. That's basically kind of the trend that we're going on here. And that includes the next card, which is a very simple Zap. Zap costs 0, which is pretty sweet. Deals 3 arcane damage to target hero. It still has that defense value. And we are running the red pitch and the blue pitch for Zap. The blue pitch for Zap only deals 1 arcane damage, but it only costs 0 to play. And it has, that all important 3 pitch value. So we're running Zap, 0 cost, 3 damage. We are running Scalding Rain, 1 cost, 4 damage, and then Voltic Bolt, 2 cost, 5 damage. So you can kind of see how the cards scale up in cost and then damage. The next card we're going to talk about is not really a damage dealing card, but a really good support card. We have Tome of Aetherwind. This is a 0 cost wizard action, only has a defense of 2. We are running the red pitch version because that is the only one that exists, because this is a super rare. We are running 3 of them. What does it do? It says, choose 2. You may choose the same mode more than once. The next card you play this turn with an effect that deals arcane damage instead deals that much damage +1, or draw a card. So you can draw 2 cards, or you can do both of these, or you can do the damage boost twice. Really, really good card for the deck. So when you want to do as much damage as you can, then you can play Tome of the Aetherwind, pump up that damage, or you can just draw some cards. And it costs 0, so very, very good. We want to have the low cost cards because we still have to play them when we see them with our hero ability. So having the ability to play it for 0 is pretty good. Next up is Stir the Aetherwinds. This is another pump card. We are running the red pitch value and the blue pitch value. Once again, you can kind of see a theme there. So the red pitch value has a cost of 2, defense of 2 here, and it says you may play your next wizard non-attack action card as though it were an instant, and if it has an effect that deals arcane damage, it deals that much +3 instead. Really good. So we can deal a lot of damage with that forked lightning. And it also makes it an instant, which is very, very cool. The blue pitch value, exactly the same thing, except it pumps the effect of the arcane boost by 1 instead of 3. Really, really good for this deck. You really want to play multiples of these. So play like Stir the Aetherwinds, use your weapon, that's an additional 4 damage, maybe even play the Tome of the Aetherwind if you can play it at instant speed. So that's what? 3, 6, 7. That's an additional 7 damage, plus the 2 from Forked Lightning. So that's what? 7, 9, 9, and then 9. That's 18 damage. That's so much. You can do a lot of burst damage with this deck. The last couple cards that we have in the deck are cards that really help us play everything else. So first up, we have the Time Snap Potion. This is a blue pitch value, 0 cost generic action. It says action, destroy Time Snap Potion, gain 2 action points. We are running a full playset of these. Really, really good card to just drop on a turn where you don't want to kind of pop off and then save it for later, and then you can kind of use it to gain 2 action points, which is very, very good, and also has blue pitch value, so you can use it for resources if you really need to. Very similarly, we are running the Energy Potion, blue pitch value, 0 cost, generic action, instant, destroy it, gain 2 resources. So you can kind of play this and then save it for later when you really need to gain more resources, so you can kind of pop off and do a bunch of stuff all in one turn. I will note, and this is very important, both of the potions have no defense value. So you're really going to want to have to play them and maybe save other cards to use for defense. And the final card in the deck is Whisper of the Oracle. This card's really, really good for the deck. 0 cost, red pitch, 3 defense. We are running both the blue and the red pitch, and it simply says opt for go again. So once again, opt, you gotta look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may put them on the top and or bottom in any order. Has go again, because it's not an instant already. And the blue pitch value is the exact same thing, except it's just opt 2 instead of the opt 4. This card is really, really good for the deck because we really want to stack the top of the deck for the right cards so we can, use them to the most effectiveness with his hero ability. And that was my Kano Drakai of Aether deck tech. I hope you all liked it. I think this deck is pretty fun. It's not quite in the same place that some of the other decks that I have are, but I think it's still in a pretty good spot. And I think this is, a good shell, a good damage dealing shell that you can kind of build off from. If you saw this deck tech and you're like, oh, you know what, that looks cool, but maybe I want to kind of tweak it a little bit, you can kind of do that and kind of add your own kind of stuff and your own, pizzazz to it. If you liked the video, then maybe leave a like, comment, and or subscribe. Check out my Patreon if you'd like to support me and help me do more videos like this. But regardless of what you do, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time for some more card game content. I will see you later.